The Roman Empire. That thing you can't stop thinking about. And you're not alone. It's a topic that has intrigued scholars through history, including Edward Gibbon, who wrote 6 whole volumes on why it collapsed. But don't worry, let's see how it fell and how the last emperors ruled from Ravenna, a city you probably had not heard about before, and which you can still visit. So there we go.
Drink up, me hearty Joe.
Let's zoom into the situation of the empire in the 3rd century. So what do we see? Over 25 emperors in a span of 50 years, and most of them dying violently, multiple claimants to the throne, leading to ongoing wars, Germanic tribes invading northern provinces, the Sassanid Empire in Persia frequently attacking the eastern provinces, and a crumbling economy with inflation spiraling out of control. Well, no doubt they call this period the 3rd century crisis.
Boy, that escalated quickly. I mean, that really got out of hand fast.
It jumped up a notch.
It did, didn't it?
Luckily for the Romans, there would be one man who would improve the situation: Diocletian. He was a career soldier and was proclaimed emperor by his troops, like the 20 emperors before him. So what was special about him? He actually understood the main cause of the turmoil and tried to tackle it. Likewise, he realized that unlike 1 century ago, Rome wasn't conquering new territories, which meant that the emperors didn't have anything to give to their loyal generals. This meant that for their generals, the only way to get more influence or power was to kill the emperor they were just serving. Which makes the empire sound less like a government and more like an ancient battle royale.
The king of the unibrow! Not this king.
Diocletian's solution was simple. Since the cake was no longer growing, they would have to split the cake, meaning that the empire would have to become more decentralized, giving more power to the local and provincial administrations. He even moved the capital from Rome to Mediolanum, the current Milan, in order to better manage the western provinces.
I'm going on an adventure!
He took the decentralization effort so seriously that he established the Tetrarchy, the rule of 4 emperors. It is the modern equivalent to when you have a project which is in danger of missing a deadline, and you bring 4 more project managers so that it is delivered on time. It always works. It's a flawless strategy.
So that means that when I make a mistake, I have 8 different people coming by to tell me about it. That's my only real motivation, is not to be hassled.
Despite how interesting the system can be, it was short-lived. So let's not focus on it and just get from this period that the empire was decentralized. And did this work? It surprisingly did. The internal conflicts drastically decreased and it gave the empire the stability it required. Although there would be some power struggles after his abdication in 305, they were more similar to the ones of the 1st and 2nd century, so it looked like they were back to normal. Being an emperor was no longer a high-risk job.
I'm just glad it's over.
The next important emperor to consider was Constantine the Great, who managed to become the sole ruler of the empire in 324. He did, however, keep the lessons learned about sharing power, and he co-ruled together with his sons and generals. Additionally, his successors would also keep this in mind and would share the power between their families and generals, being conscious that it was not possible to go back to the centralized empire. I guess the idea of the Italian family mafia isn't so new after all.
That I cannot do.
And we can now talk about the other influential factor on the late Roman Empire, the Germanic tribes, and their incorporation into the empire. The Romans had decided long time ago that they would not try to conquer land beyond neither the Rhine nor the Danube, so there would be a hard border or limes on that area. Therefore, there would be some sporadic raids, trading, and migration on those regions. There were some small-scale settlements during the early empire, but the manpower shortage of the 3rd century crisis made such settlements more common. The practice of recruiting them for the army was standardized with Diocletian, and Constantine even allowed them to occupy high ranks in the army. In general, the army stopped being attractive to the Roman citizens, who decided to pursue other careers, such as becoming traders. Therefore, the army relied steadily more on these Germanic tribes. Rome started outsourcing its military as their citizens focused on making money, a perfect balance.
Perfectly balanced, as all things should be.
The turning point came in 378, the year the Battle of Adrianople took place. A couple of years before, one of these tribes, the Visigoths, begged Rome for asylum as they were being pushed by the Huns who were taking their territories. The Romans, understandably, had some doubts, but the Eastern Roman Emperor at the time, Valens, thought that one solution would be to allow this tribe in and settle them near the border. This would effectively create a buffer region against other potential invaders, such as the Huns, so they no longer would have to hire them individually, they would just have a region controlled by them and they would protect it. Unfortunately for him, migrating a group of people required some proper management, which wasn't the case, and ended up sparking a revolt of the newcomers. Long story short, while the confident Romans thought that they could easily defeat the Goths, they were annihilated and Valens was killed during the battle. That's the ancient Roman equivalent of skipping the tutorial and going straight to the final boss. And now is when we have to introduce the arguably last great Roman emperor, Theodosius I or Theodosius the Great. I try to show you the cool guys, those named the Great. He was put in command to handle the disaster, and the solution would end up bringing the demise of the empire. He created the Foederati System, which meant that barbarian tribes were given land and some degree of autonomy within the empire, like in a federation, but in return they would have to fight for Rome. Giving independent military power to outsiders and expecting them to stay loyal has never worked in history. And yet, every few centuries someone says, "But this time will be different." It never is.
No, you just need to believe.
It was the first time something like that was done in the empire, and it would end up in a mess where the Foederati leaders would become regional warlords. And since the west of the empire relied considerably more on them compared to the east, the former would collapse shortly after, while the latter would last longer. From the western perspective, what the defeat of Adrianople meant was that those tribes could defeat Roman legions. Thus, why risk the life of Roman citizens when the same could be achieved using these barbarians? They simply decided to take the outsourcing even further, and instead of relying on some individual contractors, they just handed over the entire defense department to another collective.
I don't want to play with you anymore.
But let's not jump too much ahead of us. After the death of Theodosius the Great, the empire was officially divided into two. Arcadius ruled the Eastern Roman Empire from Constantinople, while Honorius ruled the Western Roman Empire from Milan. None of them was named the Great though, so they must not have done a great job on the role. Let's focus on the western side from now onwards. Poor Arcadius. Every time historians talk about this period, it's always, let's focus on the Western Roman Empire. Meanwhile, Arcadius is over in Constantinople like, guys, I'm still here.
Notice me, senpai! Notice me!
In short, this era was a complete and absolute mess. The emperors were not interested in ruling, so they would leave all the military affairs to some chief general, who were usually of mixed heritage, Roman and barbarian, which shows us that the barbarians had a strong influence in the military by this point. And the generals and Foederati leaders would fight between each other to increase their influence. This period can be used by George R.R. Martin or soap opera writers if they are looking for inspiration.
I have always been your son.
It was at this point when they realized that their capital was too exposed, and the emperor decided to move the capital to Ravenna. It was a small city in a swampy area, which was close to Classis, one of the main ports at the time, meaning that it was easy to defend and had good communications with the Eastern Roman Empire. They just moved to a swamp and hoped nobody would find them. It's like when you own money and you suddenly start living off the grid.
Because I'm exactly who you think I am. Hell, I'll pretty much steal anything that isn't nailed down.
For the next 74 years, the Empire would keep fighting against external barbarian tribes, but most importantly, also against the different Foederati. The latter would keep expanding their respective areas of influence until they realized that they no longer had to pledge allegiance to the Emperor, and they could become completely independent. Rome was sacked multiple times, and the Western Roman Empire lost territories one by one. Where the Empire once stood, we now had a series of barbarian kingdoms, each ruled by a warlord. And it would be in Ravenna where 74 years later the last emperor of Rome would be deposed, although he was by this time a completely symbolic figure. Honestly, by that point being the emperor was like being the captain of a ship that had already sunk.
Gentlemen, it has been a privilege playing with you tonight.
I hope you liked the video and you found it interesting, as I definitely enjoyed making it. The Roman Empire was a topic I was looking forward to talking about, so I'm glad I finally started with it. It's true that I have started with the collapse of it, but well, at least there are no spoilers after this. I was recently on holidays in Ravenna and I thought of doing a series on the city. However, in order to enjoy the city, I thought it was crucial to understand how and under which circumstances it became the capital of the Western Roman Empire. So this video will set up the context for quite some which are in the making. Stay tuned, subscribe if you don't want to miss any new content, and remember to like and share this video if you enjoyed it. Catch you on the next one!